Welcome to Foodie Time. I'm Jay Fettigan, and in this episode, I talk with my good friend Jonathon Alsop about the sometimes difficult intersection between wine and St. Patrick's Day. Enjoy. I thought it would be good to maybe take a wine lover's idea of what do you do on St. Patrick's Day. And I mean, clearly the joke is, I guess you serve Vino Verde. Is that what? Anyway, what are your? I'm sorry, bad joke. What are your thoughts on wine for St. Patrick's Day, or what do you do for St. Patrick's Day?
Well, this time of year, I start getting emails and questions from people about, what's the perfect wine match with corned beef and cabbage? What's the perfect wine match with Irish soda bread? And I always say the same thing. I say, you may never have heard of this, but it's a wine called beer, okay? Come on, wine lovers, give it a rest. I mean, can we not drink wine one day a year? Um, the answer apparently is no. We can't not drink wine even one day a year. But
That's right.
um, there are, that being said, there are a couple of options to keep the Irish vibe alive in your wine life.
Yeah.
The Ireland Funds actually has what they call the Wine Geese Society.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a society that celebrates wine, food, all kinds of culinary accomplishments of Irish people around the world.
Oh.
Now, one of the most popular cognacs, one of the most popular cognacs in the world is Hennessy,
Mm-hmm.
of course. And
Right.
this is a French cognac, but of course, this was founded by Irishman James Hennessy.
Hmm.
So that's an option. That's an option for you. If you're a big fan of red Bordeaux, there's a famous Bordeaux chateau called Chateau Lynch Bages,
Mm-hmm.
and this was founded by Irishman John Lynch from Galway, who founded this winery in Bordeaux.
Huh.
A ton of great Irish American winemakers.
Mm-hmm.
People are pretty familiar with Klein Cellars.
Yes, very popular.
And Nancy Klein, her family is from County Cork.
Huh.
So Klein Cellars is always an option. Concannon Vineyards in Livermore. They were a pioneer of Petite Syrah,
Mm-hmm.
and their founder, James Concannon, in the early 1800s, he was the first Irishman to found a successful winery in California. Winery still in business today and still run by his family.
Hmm.
Want to go over into Australia?
Sure.
Australian wines. I mean, I'm a huge fan of the McGuigan brothers,
Mm-hmm.
which I know that sounds like a punchline to a joke that my grandfather used to tell. But McGuigan brothers, great, again, a great Irish family and a great Australian winery. Chateau Montelena, one of the wineries that was so instrumental in the Judgment of Paris in
Right.
1976, the big French versus American taste-off. Jim Barrett was the founder of Chateau Montelena, and he was born in Chicago, but his parents were Irish immigrants.
Hmm.
And just many, many more. Robin McBride, McBride Sisters, is an emerging important vineyard and winery. And
Mhm.
Robin McBride and her sister Andrea founded this as well. So
Huh.
another thing I love about St. Patrick's Day is this myth that Jameson Irish whiskey is Catholic. and
Uh-huh.
Old Bushmills is Protestant.
I didn't know that.
Right. Yeah. It's first of all, it's not true.
Right.
The distiller at so Jameson's is in the north. Old Bushmills is in the south.
Right.
Um, but the distiller for Jameson's is Protestant
Hmm.
of this alleged Catholic whiskey, and the distiller of Old Bushmills is Catholic. For this allegedly Protestant whiskey.
Well,
So lots of options there. I mean, I myself prefer the black and tan,
yes.
right? I think
For
that's
anybody who doesn't know, what would describe how does one make a black and tan?
well, so it's a combination of Guinness Stout and Guinness, I don't know, is it Guinness Lager?
Or
Just like
harp. I always use harp.
yeah,
But
just like a straight ahead beer.
right.
And yeah, and it separates a little bit, right? Because they have very different weights, so it'll separate in the glass.
Right, you pour them both in a glass,
Right.
and then you get two different layers.
Right. And so the black is the Guinness, and then the tan is the beer
Right.
part of that. But to me, that's the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
Right?
Now,
You get that Guinness oomph, but you also get some lightness of the beer with it too.
Now, growing up, mostly in Ohio, did you and or your family, although not of Irish descent, did you celebrate St. Patrick's Day or do anything for St. Patrick's Day in your youth?
We used to celebrate it in school.
mhm.
Um, strangely enough, where I grew up in Ohio was near Cincinnati, which is the oldest part of Ohio.
Mhm.
So a lot of people was not like here in Boston that people have a direct and meaningful connection to their Irish background or even their Italian background. So I know as a child I was not really conscious
Mhm.
of that. It was only a few years ago that it dawned on me that my classmate Joel Bonfiglio,
Uh,
I'm like, wow, I think that guy was Italian. Right? It was just not part of our consciousness out in the country,
mm,
out in the country like that. But
Yeah, because I know I grew up. Of course, my father is a first generation American Irish.
uh,
right.
but
Both of my parents were first generation, and as you I'm sure remember, they were uh, more or less ashamed of their immigrant
Right.
backgrounds. And I never had corned beef cabbage. You'd never catch my father wearing green on St. Patrick's Day.
Right.
They just as my mother with her Italian, she would never speak Italian, even though she
Right.
could. And I suspect that whole generation now is gone. And of course, we celebrate St. Patrick's Day here in the Fedigan household,
Sure.
and have for years. But I guess it's kind of skipped a generation, I'd say.
Well, yes, when people leave a past behind, maybe a past that is not relentlessly positive for them,
mhm.
you know, um, to get some emotional distance, they don't connect with the stereotypical, archetypical sort of manifestations of that culture in a new culture.
Right.
Um,
Well, and in my parents' generation, they faced a tremendous amount of prejudice, and
right.
the people I think don't understand it quite as well today as in those days. But
Right.
it certainly I know professionally held my father back. The fact that he was Irish and
Mhm.
Catholic was had two strikes against him.
It's hard to go back and remember those times. When the fact that John Kennedy was Catholic,
Mhm.
like that was a real issue for a lot of people. So much so that he had to address it.
Yes,
His
yeah,
presidential run, he had to get out in front of it and say, no, I don't answer to the Pope.
He literally did say that in
He
those
did.
words.
Yeah, 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 exactly. And it's hard to remember that time when, Irish Catholic and Italian Catholic was like it was a taboo group or
Oh yes.
an outcast group. It seems long, long ago, but it wasn't that long ago.
Right. Um, so Irish foods. Do you do an Irish dinner for St. Patrick's Day? Do you try and make something special for or do you just go to the bakery and get a loaf of Irish soda bread and call it a day?
Yeah, the second one.
Yeah.
The second one. I don't know why, but I don't know. I was profoundly confused one year long ago, and I did make Welsh rarebit on St. Patrick's Day. I
Mhm.
thought I thought that's as close as I'm going to get. Um,
I have to admit it. I've never in my whole life even I don't even think I've ever tasted corned beef and cabbage. Which is the traditional meal, I guess. I guess I'll have to try it sometime.
it's these old, I mean, these old traditions that sort of sometimes they evolve, sometimes they mutate,
Mhm.
sometimes they grow stronger, sometimes they fade.
Right.
Um, the whole association of the Irish with potatoes,
Right.
and this in this almost insulting image of the Irish people as potato eaters.
Mhm.
The Irish connection with the potato is like much more painful
Mhm. Mm. Oh,
and really much more about suffering, much more about famine, much more about victimization, um, than a real affection for some special affection for the potato.
right.
Um,
I
but
mean,
that's
the
something that,
potato.
Famine is drove the Irish to the United
United
so many,
States,
yeah,
in the 19th century,
yeah.
certainly.
um, my grandmother always used to who was of course Irish, from Ireland, um, and she would always say, "Oh, these damn Americans! They always take the skins off the potatoes. The skin is the best part."
She could never understand that. It's that's where all the nutrients are. It touches
Yeah.
the dirt. It's not the. Why would you throw that out?
Well, and I remember even as a boy being, my family coming from Kentucky, coming from the hills of Kentucky,
Hmm.
had a very unique food style.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, what today we would call soul food.
Huh.
Um, and I just remember I was just profoundly ashamed, to have people over for dinner,
Mm.
right? And to see the sorts of country food. I didn't know why we couldn't have TV dinners. That just seemed so much more modern, so much more, again, putting distance between myself and that background. Um,
Mm.
so I can see that happening with a lot of other ethnic generations too.
well, well, um, unless I think that we've pretty much covered St. Patrick's Day. Anything that we haven't, you've certainly done your homework, and I appreciate that.
That was great.
I had to come up with something better than eat and drink separately. That's people don't like that advice.
No, that's right. Yeah.
Have your wine with the cheese and like you have a good Irish cheese and some wine is a
Right.
Nice, a
But
nice
keep
combination.
but keep it in the other room.
Well, happy St. Patrick's Day, John, and
You
enjoy
too.
yourself. Thanks a
You
lot.
too. Anytime.
Bye.
Well, that was episode 5, the St. Patrick's Day episode of Foodie Time with my great friend Jonathon Alsop talking about wine and St. Patrick's Day. And boy, does he ever show up prepared. All those wineries that had connections to Ireland and all the winemakers, it was just wonderful. And then the conversation really headed into some pretty interesting topics afterwards. And, well, I hope you enjoyed it. I'm Jay Fettigan, and we'll see you next time on Foodie Time.